Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, we're going to find out more about funding opportunities currently available with the UK government. But before I hand over to our presenter, I just wanted to remind everyone that today's session will be recorded and shared online later at a later time. The webinar will include a 30-minute presentation followed by a Q&A session at the end. So please use the Q&A panel in Teams to submit all of your questions. We'll make sure we answer as many of those as we can at the end of the session. I would also like to thank Hexagon, who are sponsoring today's webinar. They're a global leader in digital reality solutions and make manufacturing smarter. To find out more about what they do, please visit their website, hexagonmi.com. Now, without further ado, I will hand over to Jas, who will lead today's presentation. Over to you, Jas.
Thank you, and welcome everybody, and thank you to STC and our sponsors for allowing me the opportunity today to talk about Defence and Security Accelerator, what we do, and the opportunities that are potentially there for the supply chain. So I'm going to spend about 20-25 minutes or so talking about who DASA are, a little bit about our background, how we operate, and the various opportunities, both in terms of technology development but also business development, and there'll be plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. So moving on, so in terms of a very high level overview of what DASA does, so we were set up 5 or 6 years ago by the UK government to essentially go out and find ideas which we could, on behalf of our customers, fund and exploit. And I'll talk a little bit more around the customers in a moment, and that we're here to support UK defence and security, and I'll touch on who they are. And as an accelerator, as you'd expect, we are here to effectively move quickly and effectively. And then underpinning I guess all of our activities is we are actually interested in developing the UK supply chain and the prosperity that goes with that. So that's a very sort of succinct statement around what DASA is and what they do. In terms of our very broad structure, the way we operate is that we have a plethora of government customers, and I'll show a few of those in the next slide, and that's made up of the Ministry of Defence, so that covers the defence side of things, and that's everything the UK Ministry of Defence do, and then on the security side is pretty much every other government department. So they are effectively what we call our customers to DASA, and they come along with the challenges and the funding. And then we have quite a large supply chain of people like yourselves who we see as suppliers, so people from small companies, academia and larger companies, and you are effectively, from our point of view, described as the innovator community. So that is in broad how we're arranged, and then DASA that sits neatly in the middle to go do the finding and funding on behalf of those customers. I spoke about the customers, so one thing that usually is a surprise. So obviously, for the layman, people think about the Ministry of Defence, the Army, Air Force and Navy and all the things that they do. Yes, we do a lot of that, but actually we do a lot more besides that. So you'll see on this montage is a quite an eclectic mix of organisations, not only from the UK, but some of our allies from Australia. You can see there the US Department of Defence. We work closely and collaboratively with them to address some of their challenges. And you'll see organisations in there what you might not have thought about as potential customers. So you've got the National Crime Agency there, you've got the Cabinet Office, so it's pretty broad in terms of what we do. So the security side is very broad in its nature. So that they are essentially, as I said, our customers. They provide the funding for what we do. You as suppliers are there to help service those needs, and I get asked often, is my organisation suitable and capable and eligible? So DASA are set up to work with anybody, all the way from sole traders all the way up to some of the largest companies, both in the UK and internationally. So the size of your organisation doesn't matter. Primarily it's the innovation that we're interested in. I get asked around the technology. So yes, we do all the obvious things you can think of, but we do a huge amounts besides that, and it covers science, technology, but also covers services as well. So you may be in a business where you think, oh, I don't do tech. Well, let us sort of help you work out whether what idea you've got is useful or not. We work in terms of what we look for is we cover the entire maturity range. So we use the technology readiness level. So we pretty much operate from sort of the 1-2 level, from the ideas coming out of universities all the way through to ideas which are already mature, looking for new markets. And we work with a whole range of customers and pathways in terms of how you can go effectively exploit those, i.e. how do you get to market. So I would say to anybody on the call today thinking, am I the right organisation? Have I got anything to offer? Let people like myself as a innovation partner help you understand what the landscape looks like. I guess the obvious question is why would you want to work with DASA? So DASA, as I said, was set up to be a little bit different from other government organisations, and we recognise some of those barriers to innovation and moving those innovations along at pace. And the two biggest ones, I guess, are funding, which is obvious. So if you're looking to develop your technology and you apply to DASA, for the vast majority of our calls and competitions, you get all of the money to do the work. So it's not a grant, you don't have to pay it back. You literally go into contract with DASA and you get all the money to do whatever it is you said you could do. In terms of commercially, so the very favourable terms and conditions. So the intellectual property for the vast majority of projects we do stays with you as a supplier, because we want you to keep the intellectual property and go develop that into a business and further sales and the like. And to help you, if you're still not sure, there's a standard set of terms and conditions which are available on our website now, so you can go and have a look at that. If you're still not sure whether DASA is right for you, we have a team in place. I'm one of 11 external partners based in the regions who cover each of the UK economic regions. So I cover the East Midlands, which I know the STC is just about down in the southern part of my region, but really that doesn't matter. If there's an equivalent of me in each one of the UK regions, and if you operate internationally, that's also okay, because we have a partner in place who can do that. The important thing is to get in touch with your partner, have a chat around what you're thinking and what opportunities there are. And if you're successful, you will get access to the end users, technical partners to work with, and managers who within DASA who will think about what else can we do with your technology. So whilst you have addressed a particular niche technical problem with a product, that product may have further use cases outside of that initial use case. The other thing that we do, and we've been building on for the last 2 or 3 years, that we recognise that as a business, especially if you're a small business, that you may need some support and some mentoring, some financial services and some other projects, which I'll cover in a moment. And they're there to help grow the business, because the business needs to be robust to deliver the products and services that you said you were going to do. So we have dedicated teams in place who can advise you, and that's all free of charge. So just to give you a feel for the scale of the activity, so in that 4 or 5 years, we've invested something, I think it's closer to 250 million now, and that doesn't include anything we've done, intangibles or any other further business connections we've made. And we estimate there's another 100 million on top of that in that timescale. And we've found something like around 1,200 innovations to develop as projects, and that's across around 500 businesses. One of the things that we try to do, one of the purposes of today, is to go out as an innovation partner and find new organisations, not necessarily from the obvious organisations, who can give us an idea which may come from somewhere else. So we're always looking for a more diverse set of suppliers to work with DASA and its customers. So typically our rollover is around, any given time of year, is around 40% new suppliers, which is very healthy. I also get asked often, if I apply to DASA, what my chances of success. So if you go through a themed competition, which I'll touch on, it's about 1 in 4 chance you'll get funded, which is very good compared to other government funding agencies. And if you go through our open call, it's around 1 in 5. So funding mechanisms. So we essentially have sort of three silos. On the left-hand side, we have what we call themed competition. This is where one of those customers I mentioned earlier, let's say the army, somebody senior in the army says, I've got this particular acute problem. I want to spend so much money, and I want some solutions at a certain maturity by a given date. DASA then on their behalf will go do that. And we generally operate in, we sort of silo things into 3 phases. There's the early conceptual design development we do, which what we typically call phase 1, and typically, but not exclusively, that's around 100,000. And what you'll find is I'll say approximately, you know, circa, because we're not hard and fast on some of this stuff, you know, we're trying to be as flexible as we can. And then a phase 2 is where you move the idea where it's been proven up to sort of prototyping, so typically 250,000 or more. And then there's the phase 3, which is sort of the back end, which is integrating with other systems. And they're themed competitions. They come and go periodically throughout the year. So you look on our website, we have launch events and webinars. So I think this year we've done something like 10, and I'll touch on some of the ones which are coming down the line in a moment. If having looked at all of that and anything previously, you thought, oh, I'm not sure if I fit into that, then we have an open call for everybody else. So it literally is a funding call which is open all year round. We run typically 4 or 5 cycles. So at the moment we're around mid-cycle. And typically you can get up to around, the guidance is around £350,000 for ideas that can get to around TRL6, and that's in our open call. Again, if you're interested in that, then talk to your innovation partner. And then we have a number of programs which are slightly different to that, and the one I'm going to talk about today is the Defence Technology Exploitation Programme, which is a slightly different arrangement, which I'll cover in a few moments. So that's the funding for technology and service development. So at the moment we have a number of calls that are open. As I said, you know, they come and go. Typically the cycle is we'll do a bit of activity, sort of let people know that it's coming down the line, and then it's typically open for 6 to 8 weeks for you to get your application developed and in, having spoken to your partner with a closing date. And typically it's about 8 weeks after that we let you know whether you've been successful, and if you've been successful we're trying to get into contract with you sort of 4 to 6 weeks after that. So it's quite fast paced. So if you apply, let's say at the next say, if you look at the top left hand side, there's a call out at the moment around innovation in space. It closes tomorrow. You know, you're not going to make that, but if you did submit and you were successful, you'd be looking to be in contract sort of October, November time. So that's where we add that sort of ability to move quickly. And the reason we can do that is what you submit as a bid into DASA is what effectively what we contract against. So it's important you get that right, and your innovation partner can actually provide you with a hands-on support to understand what a good bid looks like. So I say that there's a number of calls at the moment. Go look on our website to get a feel for what the documents look like and the level of detail. So you'll see there's a few that close in a few weeks time. There's one that opens this Thursday, so well worth having a look. There's a launch event today, and there'll be other information that comes out online as and when. So it's worthwhile just making sure you check in with the DASA website periodically. And then we've got 3 more coming down the line. So there's land-based technology threats from sea. So that's going to be sometime this month. We've got one around autonomous sensors. So I think possibly in this community, there may be some really interesting ideas that you've got and you want to develop. So it's worth taking a look at that. And in fact, before the launch of that, we have actually put some information out there already. So you can go to the DASA website and there is some high level information on that. And then we've got a third call around microbiological material sensing coming in September. So that's all available today. There's more planned for the rest of the year. So you need to just keep an eye on what's coming down the line. And if you think, oh, I might have something, talk to your partner and they may tell you about something which is coming down the line. Okay, so that's themed competitions, and they come with their own set of funding and criteria. And then we have the open call, which is everything else. So currently it's open. We're in our 4th cycle of the current fiscal year. And at the moment, we're looking for ideas for our defence customers, what we call rapid impact. So ideas that can be prototyped within around 3 years for around it could be in less time, it could be for a lot more money. It depends on what you do. And that call closes on the 5th of September this year. But if you think, look, that's a bit racy, you've got summer coming up, I'm busy doing other stuff, not to worry. It reopens the following day for another few months. Okay, so again, we're looking for defence aligned ideas. And if you're not sure, talk to your innovation partner. You can submit a query into DASA through an online our online portal. And if you've got an idea, you're not even sure, if anybody's interested, where your partner can go talk to some of our internal team who are embedded within those customer organisations, and we can go socialise effectively your idea to see if anybody wants it. And that's important. You know, we need to make sure that there's somebody who actually wants the idea before you go commit time and resource to a full bid. So it's a bit of a mini step. And then within the open call, we have things called innovation focus areas. So at the moment, we've got one around artificial intelligence for defence, and these come and go, but typically they're there for 2 or 3 cycles. So this is where the customer's saying, look, I'm not sure exactly what I want, but I've got a broad theme. Can we just go out there and let's see what comes along? So that's our open call. So I touched on the Defence Technology Exploitation Programme. If I give a bit more detail, because this might be of real interest to you if you're an SME. So the background to this programme is that the UK government knows there's some technologies it needs, and they're going to come from the supply chain, but ultimately they will be delivered through through one of the larger organisations, the primes, if you like, and that's realistically the only vehicle to do that. But we recognise that we have to incentivise that supply chain. So this programme is slightly different, where it allows the SME to effectively partner with a higher tier supplier and apply for half the funding through a grant scheme, so up to £1 million project, for example. So if you're a small SME, you think, let's say, you want to work with BAE Systems, but you know you haven't got that framework or the connections, this program allows you to do that. In terms of what we're looking for, so if you go to the website, there's quite a detailed list of the types of technologies and challenges. It's not an exhaustive list, and to help with that, we do, as per the open call and also our competition, we can do a bit of a mini step. So you can provide an outline, and we can go talk to the customers, and they can say, yes, it's in scope, it's the sort of thing we'd like to see. And then you go away and develop a full bid and proposal. And we have a team in place dedicated just to help you walk through that process and understand what that bid should look like. So if you're a lower tier supplier, as long as there's a higher tier supplier part of that consortium, so it doesn't have to be the biggest, it could be just the next person in the supply chain. And there you go. I say there's a very broad range of things that we're looking for. So it's not exhaustive. If you've got something you're not sure, go ask. So again, we run a number of cycles. So if you're thinking that you have an idea and you want to go on litmus test that, you need to get that sort of 1 to 2 page idea written up and submitted by the 7th for a panel to consider, and that's for cycle 4. If you're already in that process, cycle 3, just to let you know, close on the 7th of September. Okay, so that's the DTEC programme. I've listed here on this slide some of the very high level areas. I would encourage you to go look at the actual detail below each one of those 5 areas. There is one which actually is a catch-all category. So I spoke about sort of having that robustness in the business and to support that post-technology funding and the opportunities. If you are looking to provide products or services into defence, maybe you already do that today, or you're an SME and you're thinking, look, I've got the idea, but I need to grow my business, or I need new premises, or recruit or train staff, then you can apply for a Defence Innovation Loan with DASA. And this is to effectively help you commercialise that product. So that you can apply for this loan. It's a cheap, flexible loan. So this is where your idea is already at that maturity level. It just needs to be pushed over into that commercialisation space. So you can get a loan anywhere between 100,000 and £2 million. As it says there, it can cover 100% of that project cost. I guess the appeal for this particular product is that it's at a very, very favourable market interest rate. So we set this rate, I guess, 2-3 years ago, before the current sort of escalation of interest rates. So I think the rates are 7.4%, and you only pay that back when you're profitable for that particular product line. Again, we have a dedicated person who can help sort of triage your sort of idea around what you're going to do with this. So it doesn't matter whether you've been funded with DASA before. If you're providing something into defence, then you're eligible. And we run this particular call in partnership with Innovate UK. So there are other services we offer. And there's a range of them depending on where your maturity is, where your idea is, and where you want to develop. So I said the important thing is get in touch with your innovation partner, and they will connect you with the relevant business person within the organisation. So we have a dedicated team of business specialists who can help mentor that. They'll just essentially have an initial meeting, triage your business, understanding what your needs are, and they will point you towards a particular product. Okay. I guess the other service we offer, which we're developing, is essentially signposting suppliers with their ideas to customers and doing it in a much quicker way. So we are in the process of developing essentially an online portal, so you can submit an idea and abstract in a safe, secure environment, and somebody at the other end may pick it up. And that's equally if you're a supplier, you're looking for someone to work with and to collaborate with. So that's all available on our website. Have a play around with it, sign up to it, and it's still sort of a work in progress. So that's the sort of direction of travel, sort of the next iteration of products DASA is offering. So that's just a QR code to where you can get to. So there is actually a direct link to the Ideas Marketplace on our online platform. So just the last slide, just to reiterate. So there's one of me in each of the UK regions. One of our East of England colleagues on the line today as well. I'm going to introduce her, and the important thing is to reach out and get in touch with the innovation partner. You can, so I've circled in red there, get in touch with DASA. If you just follow those links, and it will ask you to register your name, your query. You just enter your business postcode, and it will signpost you to the relevant person in your region. So have a look at the website, have a look at previous competitions, and that's it. And there are a number of ways you can sort of keep tabs with DASA. LinkedIn is pretty good. So if you're in my region in the East Midlands, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and you can, I signpost ideas of interest and the like. So that's it from me. So if we move on to any questions.
Thank you, Jas. That's been great. We do have a few questions. Just a reminder to everyone, please use the Q&A panel in Teams to submit your questions. First question, I'm already in discussions with the government department on an idea. Does that matter? So when it comes to those applications, please tell us more.
No, in fact, that's it helps us. If you're already in discussions with an end customer, that actually helps DASA help you in some way. So if you apply, you will sort of have to articulate who you're going to provide the product to and why. So if you already have a customer, that's it's already helpful. It means that we can just manage those relationships in a much more efficient way.
That's brilliant. Thank you. We do have a question. If successful and a client gets with DASA, will we, at our respective organizations, get the necessary security clearances via the FSC or the IPSA forms, so that we can get the right data to craft any AI, for example?
Right, so it very much depends on whether it's within the bounds of the themed competition, so they will say what you do and don't get. And it very much depends on what you're doing and whether it needs security classification. So talk to your innovation partner around what it is you're proposing and what you need. So in our open call, generally, you can ask for what we call government furnished assets. So if you want to develop an idea, but you can only do it with government hardware, or government software, or government advice, we can effectively help bake that into your proposal. So when you submit the proposal, it will say, I'm asking for this. And if you're deemed successful, then contractually government, or DASA in this case, are contractually bound to provide those services or data and information.
That's great. Thank you very much. That's very useful. Just a reminder that we need all questions to be submitted via the panel, and we cannot ask those in person. In terms of other questions, I have non-UK nationals working in my company. Does that matter?
No, not really. So the starting point is everybody is eligible, but clearly if you're working on a particular sensitive defence or security project and that individual has access, then it will be on a case-by-case basis. So talk to your innovation partner. They will go ask the customers whether the person is eligible or not. But for the vast majority of projects we do, we rarely say no. So there are, for example, we have got dual nationals and nationals from, let's say, Russia or China or even Iran. And it depends on what the project is and depends on your role within the project. So, for example, if your project team is developing, I don't know, let's say a new material, and the person that is the technician, then it's unlikely that they're going to have direct access. And we do actually, when you apply, you have to say who those individuals are in the bid. And you have to declare their nationalities. And for our competitions, we ask that people submit as part of the process what we call a supplier assurance questionnaire, and that effectively is a pre-contract risk assessment around the project team. And therefore, the people who do the assessment will already know before they make a decision whether someone is or isn't eligible based on that risk profile.
That's very helpful. Thank you very much. One more question. Is it okay for me to work, is it okay for me to collaborate with another company to develop and submit a bid into DASA?
Yeah, you can collaborate and work with anybody you choose to, but commercially we would contract with the lead organisation. So the one company would submit and we would contract against them. So any funding they receive, they would effectively flow down to what you called our collaborators. But effectively they would be suppliers to the commercial organisation. So you flow the terms and conditions down to any other organisation. Collaboration, so a lot of our bids are in collaboration, but commercially it's just the front end organisation gets all the money and then flows it down. And in fact, you have to declare all the collaborations within the project as part of the submission process.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you very much. So we've got a question here. So bear with me 1 second. I'll just go over it. So we have submitted our bid for an innovative product, for a defense product, but we were told by DASA it is not innovative enough. 3 months later, a large defense organization approached us and asked us if we can develop this further so they can examine it and establish if they can use it. Can your old application be re-reviewed?
Okay. So a couple of things. So DASA are primarily here to find ideas which are novel. And by that, I mean typically things which are game-changing or provide capabilities we don't have, or a step-changing capabilities. And the way I typically help people is if you're going to develop a material and it gives you a small incremental improvement, let's say 1 to 2% in a particular material property, DASA are highly unlikely to be the organisation that funds that. We are here to fund things that are a little bit more riskier, higher, that are going to give us bigger gains. So if you said, look, I've got this idea and it gives me a 10 or 20% improvement, that's more likely. So the idea that was submitted, the one that's in question, is probably not innovative enough, i.e. it's more incremental. That doesn't mean somebody else in government isn't interested in that. So it does happen. In terms of resubmission, no. So the only time you can resubmit is either if you've been asked to, or something substantially has changed within the technical scope of what you're proposing. But if you're not sure, go back to your innovation partner and say, I submitted this project, and they will have access to what sort of feedback you got, and based on that, they can go and talk to the customer and say, this is what's changed. Would you welcome another proposal?
Okay. We've got another question. We have got loads of tech, but don't deal with DASA. So is it most useful to invite the regional rep for a visit to lift the lid and gain an appreciation and help suggesting which of our customers might be interested in?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways of doing it. So if you reach out to your innovation partner, depending on where they are, so typically we are physically out in our region. So yeah, visits are possible. So just reach out to your partner, and they can, part of the finding role for the innovation team is to know what capabilities are out there. So sometimes we get asked questions from that internal audience who say, do you know a company that can do something? And for us to have that a domain knowledge of the capabilities, it's useful. But it's also useful to know what capabilities are being developed so that we can signpost opportunities that are coming down the line. So you get that early warning, you buy yourself more time to develop the idea. So yes, by all means, if your partner's happy to go and visit you, then yeah, that's possible.
That's great. Thank you very much. I think at this point, I just want to remind everyone that the slides from today's presentation will be shared after the event, so you can all reach out to Jas and follow up with any questions or items that we haven't covered in today's presentation. We do have another question. If I develop my idea with DASA funding, will I be allowed to sell any products overseas?
For the vast majority of products that we fund for their development, we want you to go and essentially, whilst you deliver something for that particular customer, we want you to go and exploit it in other markets and export and the like, because that goes to the heart of what we do, which is for that investment we make, we want you to go and grow your business and bring in revenues into the UK. So yes, you will be allowed to. The only caveat is there will be inevitably some small use cases where, from a sovereign domain UK defence and security perspective, we wouldn't want you to do that, but we will let you know that very early on.
Thank you very much. That's great. I think we've got a few more questions coming in. In terms of dates, so I guess one of the comments is around the dates that come in for the different competitions that you've got. Can you please remind us of some of the key dates that people need to be mindful of in the next couple of months, as a bit of a recap?
So for the competitions, the theme competition, they're all bespoke to that competition, and the dates that I've put in the slide pack are those dates. For the open call, the next closing date is the 5th of September on midday. So what I generally advise is talk to Innovation Partner well ahead of that, trying to get your submission ready for about a week before. So we get a lot of people who, they get to the 4th and 5th and they have a few technical issues or whatever. Once you miss the deadline, you miss the deadline. There is nothing we can do about that. So it's very important that you're trying to sort of work your way up to and get as much information. As I said earlier, one of the things we do offer is, in terms of submissions, if you have a good idea and we think it's a good idea and the customer's welcome to full submission, we want you to be able to submit the best bid that's possible. And to do that, the innovation partners can walk you through a bid writing sort of debrief, essentially teach you what sort of things you should be saying, what sort of things you shouldn't be saying, how long the presentation needs to be. So, we're not keeping it secretive. We're there to help and also answer any questions that you may have in terms of the finances or delivery dates and that sort of thing. So all the dates that I've spoken about are on our website. And if you're not sure, get in touch with the innovation partner.
That's brilliant. So one of the questions that we've got is from a company that is predominantly developing in space, and there is a closing date tomorrow for one of the competitions.
Yeah.
So they probably won't be able to make it. Does that preclude or disadvantage space team bids in the future or for any of the other programs?
No. So as Charlie Drop implies, this is the third customer focused competition we've run for space. We've run other competitions as well. So space is a big area that DASA and its customers are looking at. If you looked at the competition document and thought, oh, we could have, and clearly you missed the date, don't rush it. Talk to your innovation partner, because your idea may still have interest to the customer and you could still potentially apply through the open call. Or having spoken to innovation partner, they may talk to the customer, and the customer may say, actually, they may signpost you to another framework. So we do signpost people to other government frameworks which may be more relevant. So in short, it's about the idea. Just because you missed the date, that's not the be all and end all. Talk to innovation partner. I dealt with a few this morning where I've said it's still a good idea. We're not going to rush the bid. Let's think about putting it into the open call.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. I think we've had a couple of questions with regards to contacting you, and your colleague Vicky has very helpfully shared some details in the chat. So in addition to the slides which will be circulated after this event, there is further information on the website, and we'll include that in the post-event comms. We do have some time for additional questions if people want to raise those via chat. So we'll give a couple of minutes for anyone who wants to type anything up. But Jas, you've been very helpful. You've covered a lot of ground there. There's been quite a lot of information to absorb. And as I mentioned earlier, people will be able to contact you and speak to you again, which is, again, something that people can take offline. You can still chat and follow up on any of the topics that were covered in today's webinar. I don't think we've got any more questions coming in at this time. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank Jas for his time and for a very insightful information. I would like to thank all of our, oh, no, we've just had another one that just came in. Have we got time for another question, Jas?
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. If your system is advised to not be sold outside of the UK, how does that affect the need for profitability?
Could you say that again, Lena?
If your system is advised to not be sold outside the UK, how does that affect the need for profitability?
So not absolutely everything, as you'd expect, is about profitability. Some of it's around capability. So some of the capabilities, so in the DTEP program, are around UK sovereign defence needs, and profitability in terms of further exploitation wouldn't be a consideration as part of the bid process. So if you've got a system that addresses one of those needs, profitability or your ability to sell overseas wouldn't be part of the criteria. The important thing would be around the capability in the first instance.
I think that's great. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much from our listeners. On that note, I think we will wrap up for today. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Please go to our website to have a look at some of our upcoming events and webinars and register for any of those that might be of interest. I hope you found today's webinar useful, and I wish everyone a lovely rest of their day. Thank you very much.